Electric cars suck, but I'm going to subvert your opinion and also say gas cars are even worse than electric cars.
I want to go over a piece about electric cars being not viable. Actually, he says all automobiles are not viable and are not sustainable, and he goes into the design of urban landscapes that were designed for the cars and how they're also basically not sustainable. But there's some things that I wanted to share some thoughts on, and I will start first off by checking out what he has to say.
Imagine the changes that we have to make to battle climate change. One of the first topics of conversation is always about electric cars or autonomous vehicles. It's easy to talk about a topic that you can relate to something that you do every day. And as we know, majority of Americans commute to work with automobiles every day. In the last few years, car manufacturers like Tesla, Volkswagen, GM, Ford, and other big manufacturers have been pushing electric cars as a green solution to many of our problems when it comes to tackling climate.
He's going to go into why they think it's green solutions, but he's going to mainly talk about how you don't benefit from the green solution until maybe 5 years after the car is on the road because of how it uses up fossil fuels and creates more pollution with the manufacturing and transportation of the car itself.
Everything is a step in the right direction. I also...
As you can see here, he's really pushing the train, the idea of the train with the little picture he popped up in the cough, and we'll get to that as well. I have some thoughts as well I'd like to share on that, but he's going to be leaning towards the train as a solution, which again I'll share my thoughts after I share his view.
Times in ads and promotional materials, electric cars are praised as solving the fossil fuel dependency, or bringing on an era of sustainability, or something along those lines. But a lot of what these companies usually say is exactly what they want it to be. It's marketing, baby. We will simply innovate our way out of everything. Do not change your lifestyle in any way. Just buy our product and innovate.
I do agree with him on that. The messaging is kind of basically it's just saying we'll innovate our way to all the solutions and don't worry about anything, which we know that's not the case.
But let's actually talk about electric cars. As I said in the beginning, electric cars are a step in the right direction. They are superior to gas cars in a few different metrics, but they really only start becoming more environmentally friendly around 3 to 5 years of ownership, and this is all dependent on their battery size. This is because electric cars have a lot more rare earth materials in their batteries. These materials take a lot of CO2 to mine and to process, so even if your electric vehicle doesn't produce any CO2 emissions while running, it produces quite a few tons in the first place while getting manufactured. If you'd like to see a more in-depth video on this topic with the math presented, I recommend you go watch Engineering Explains video on it. But okay, let's try thinking about something else. What if we use our Mega Mondo galaxy brains here and just imagine that we didn't need cars in the first place? And here lies a fundamental problem. No matter what type of vehicle you use, it is simply not going to be sustainable. And I know what you're thinking now. You're probably thinking, oh, well, we gotta invest in future technologies like autonomous vehicles. That way no one individually owns a car. No, that's not what I mean. Because it's not just the vehicles that aren't sustainable, it's everything that cars use. Also, slight tangent off the script here, I don't give a fuck.
Actually, I'm not a big fan of autonomous vehicles. I meant to elaborate on that earlier when they mentioned it. I'm just not, and I don't know. We've seen it have accidents. It'd be nice just to know there's a human there in case something happens. Kind of like we know how a lot of airplanes could fly by themselves, but it's also good to have a pilot there in case, the computer malfunctions and someone needs to manually land the plane.
Like, If you're a farmer, of course you're going to need a car. I'm talking about like the 95% of Americans or whoever that lives in like the metro area of a city that like commutes everywhere in a car. Of course, if you live off in the wilderness in the middle of nowhere, yeah, cars will probably always exist. But like most people live in metro areas of cities. Anyway. Cars need infrastructure to work properly and to be efficient. This can cover the basics like neighborhood streets, parking, and commuting. And, of course, these things would exist even if cars weren't popular. Local streets always existed to get materials in and out of neighborhoods easy, and city squares have always existed to provide room for different urban activities. It's when we start looking at car infrastructure do these things really get supersized and blown out of proportion immediately. Here's a great example of a city that still has a lot of parking lots in its downtown. This is Denver, Colorado, and every single one of those yellow spots is just parking for metal boxes. It serves no other purpose. Each piece of yellow land is wasted to do a singular thing, just park boxes. And I guarantee that most of the time those places don't even have cars parked in them.
That makes me wonder, so Denver doesn't have a parking problem? And that means you don't get parking tickets like some cities? I'm just curious because he said that oftentimes he wouldn't be surprised if they didn't have a car parked in the parking space. That's interesting. I haven't seen a larger metropolitan city with that. That's actually, I actually like that. But yeah, again, I guess it's like a poor utilization of space.
Live downtown. Buildings can be complex too. Not only can you have a store or school on the bottom floor, but you can also have living spaces or apartments on top of them. This is what's called mixed-use development, and it's more walkable and bikeable. You don't need a car if the city is built the correct way. Mixed use can be really dense, but it can also be cute and fit into small towns perfectly too. And if you want to know more about that, check out one of my videos on good suburbs here. Anyway, I'll talk more about this later. Again, let's talk about housing.
I personally think you still need a car, even though everything is right there in your neighborhood, because there are people who like to travel and drive out of town, and I think that they would like to have a car accessible to them, because you can't always rent a car at the rate you want. At least if you have your own available to you, you can take whenever you want. It's a bit of a convenience. That's what I think. So I don't know if the whole mixed-use neighborhood would kind of make cars basically I don't say useless, but unnecessary, which I don't exactly agree with that.
Let's talk about housing. Cars affect housing directly and indirectly, and electric cars are no different. They can affect housing directly through requiring driveways and parking lots, which, along with needing space for parking cars, also needs additional space for larger roads to handle more cars for those parking lots. Then, needing more space for those roads and parking forces a lot of services and buildings to be farther apart, continuing the vicious cycle of needing larger and larger roads and forcing everything farther apart with parking. This all compounds itself when people find that they can live farther and farther away from the center of towns and cities in some isolated suburban development away from it all. Now I know what you're probably thinking. This is fine though. People can live the way they want. Look at this car hater. He's such an urbanist dickhead. He doesn't understand that not everyone has access to transit and not everyone lives in a city.
Funny enough, I was kind of thinking along those lines myself. But yeah, not everyone cares to live in a city, and maybe, they like to live out there. Just saying.
Here's where the rant comes. It doesn't matter where you live. These people are consistently in the largest group with the highest carbon footprint of anyone in the entire world. Also, it doesn't matter what country you live in. If you live in a car-dependent suburb, your carbon footprint is automatically higher. And that might not be your fault. You might have just bought a home in that place because it was one of the only affordable places near your job. But understand that you should be trying to change these places for the better if you do live in one. Let me remind you that we are all affected by climate change. This planet is your home, and it is my home, and I hope that you treat it as such. Also, climate change doesn't give a fuck about what political party you're in. Anyway, these suburbs consistently lose value over time. See Not Just Bikes video on this topic. Beyond that, all of this car-centric infrastructure is extremely inefficient compared to a city or to a dense suburb. All of this car infrastructure forces your water and sewer systems to be longer, contain more water, and use more energy to pump all of that water around. More transformers and more transmission losses over the distance that is needed to be traveled. You also need more streets, more asphalt.
He did mention as to building more infrastructure for cars, you need more electricity, which is like more wiring and more concrete for roads. I say to that, then you can change up how you use energy. You may not need the wires. Again, we need to maybe improve our energy infrastructure and not just, depend on just the wires, right? Maybe combine wind, solar, geothermal. That's not always it's not always the case that you're going to need more. Yes, it is the case right now, but again, if we upgraded our infrastructure in regards to energy, maybe there is a more wireless sustainable way, and you wouldn't have to add that.
More traffic lights, even more street lights, and with less density, all of this stuff adds up and it serves less and less people. Even if you come from this as an economic standpoint, it's way more economic to build walkable and bikeable towns. Disconnected suburban developments will always be incredibly inefficient, and they only exist because we make all of these terrible design philosophies just to service the automobile.
I get his point. More population dense areas, even population dense suburbs. I see that logic behind that, and he's trying to reduce carbon footprint because at the end of the video, he's going to say trains are the solution. And I'm more of a yes and no. You can have a mixed usage transportation because you still need cars and trucks to transport things. And trains are not the final solution for everything. That's where he's pushing towards. Is if trains are the answer and solves all the problems. At least that seems like the premise. Which I get it. I'm all for the trains, especially more modern trains and more modern transit. But I still think just like mixed use streets and neighborhoods and communities, you can have mixed use transportation, trains, cars, bikes, the trucks, and things like that, because trains can't maneuver the same way cars and bikes can, right? Or maybe even utilize some other alternative vehicles. There's motorcycles, there's the three-wheeling, I forgot what those things with the two. What is it called? The two wheels in the front, one wheel in the back. I don't know. Maybe you can pull something. But I'm saying, come up with other forms of transportation that uses wheels as well. But I don't think that trains will solve the entire problem or the entire issue. I do understand, again, the concept of the more population density, but at the same time, a lot of people don't want to live in a densely populated section. They may want more greenery around their house or their home. So some people like the country living close to a city, right? Just to have access or more convenience. So I kind of agree on some things, but maybe not see eye to eye on other things. I do think that electric vehicles, or it could be all other alternative vehicles, could they serve their purpose. It may not all be bad or suck like he says, but again, he says they're better than fossil fuel vehicles. So maybe we could come up with an advanced solar power vehicle, right? Something that can channel more solar energy into the car to produce just as much power as the combustion engine or the electric vehicle. That's possible as well. And solar power, you don't have to charge, right? Makes me wonder. Could be for another topic, but could you make money then, right? If it's solar powered, then you don't need to keep charging up or buying gas either. That's another topic as well, but it's something to think about. I want to thank you again for listening. Please, please, please like and subscribe. Take care. Thank you very much.